Welcome to Doc Podcast. My name is Abbas Shafi, gastroenterologist.
And I'm Rob Hoyer, medical oncologist.
This is a podcast about lifestyle medicine, disease prevention, and longevity.
This podcast is provided for informational purposes only. It is not medical advice. Please consult your physician for individualized therapies. Please also check out our website at doc2doc.health. That's doc2doc.health. There you can leave us messages, make suggestions for future episodes, and ask us questions. And now, on to the show. The following is our conversation with Dr. Larry Cohen. Larry is an emergency department physician and is board certified both in emergency medicine and in lifestyle medicine. In this episode, Larry shares his reasons for getting involved in lifestyle medicine, both personally and professionally. We found his story both inspirational and educational and thought it would be great to have him on the show. So without further ado, here's our conversation with Dr. Larry Cohen. Hi, everyone. Like I said in the intro, we're here with Dr. Larry Cohen, who's a ER physician, and just so excited, Larry, to have you on the show. And could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your interest in lifestyle medicine?
Sure. Like you said, I'm an emergency physician. I'm residency trained, board certified in emergency medicine. I did my residency training between 85 and 88 after 2 years of being overseas as a general medical officer after my internship in the Air Force. From then, I came up to the Air Force Academy. I was up here for a couple of years to finish my Air Force commitment, and then went down to Texas to help start an ER group down there, and then came back to Colorado Springs in 2003. That's how I got involved in my emergency medicine life. I got involved in lifestyle medicine, and I can talk a little bit more why and how, really in the early 2000s, and got board certified in lifestyle medicine. I was one of only three physicians in Colorado to get board certified in lifestyle medicine in 2017. That was when they had their inaugural board exams. It was myself, and then there was a family practice doctor up in Aspen and a cardiologist over on the Western Slope. We were the first three to get board certified in the state. Now there's many, many more.
Could you share your story with us? And I've heard it when we had coffee a couple times, and it's just an amazing story. And I think it'd be something really both educational and inspirational for our listeners to hear. It's quite an amazing story, and if you could share that, I think we would just love that.
Sure. I was I'm a trained physician, and I know, I take care of, as an emergency physician, take care of all kinds of emergencies. A lot of cardiac emergencies, heart attacks and cardiac deaths, as well as every other emergency that could possibly be there. Of course, I have oncologic emergencies where I'd call Dr. Hoyer in the middle of the night, or a bad GI bleed, call Dr. Shafian in the middle of the night. When I went to days, I found out that consultants are a lot nicer during the day than at night.
So, we try to be nice all the time.
You guys have always actually been very nice. But the way I got involved in lifestyle medicine is, to be honest, I was arrogant about my health. I had no real risk factors. My father died at 68 of lung cancer, smoked since he was 12, but had catheter-proven normal coronary arteries. Of course, he did not eat the way we eat today. He had a low-calorie diet pretty much and didn't eat any fast food or junk food, and so for that, I think he probably had good coronary history. My mother, on the other hand, also smoked probably 3 to 4 packs a day for over 20 years, and just threw them away one day. Eats terrible, and she just had her 98th birthday. She can't. And her mind's pretty much there, but she really has no energy. She can't move around. She's lives with my brother. But I was arrogant about my health. I didn't have diabetes, high blood pressure, family history. I never smoked. My only risk factor was I had high cholesterol. I ran about 240 to 280. Now, the only vegetables I used to eat would be like the lettuce and onion and tomato on my burger, and the tomato would have to be ketchup. I would eat French fries as well. So, And so I really was arrogant. I go, nothing's going to ever happen to me, just like most people think.
Do you think when you were growing up, like, was health really ever discussed at all, or your decision to be a doctor, was that kind of curious to hear about that, and also just like when you were at home with your parents, was health ever really even thought about, or was that just kind of like just something that was assumed? And
Yeah, no. Growing up, growing up in the 50s and 60s at home, first of all, fast foods weren't around. We did have a little burger place down in the corner. But my mother was a nurse, and I was exposed to a lot of physicians too. So I always wanted to be a doctor. Ever since I was a little kid, I wanted to be a physician. Never thought about health though. We would, when my mother would make, throw vegetables there. They were usually canned vegetables that tasted awful. The only thing I really ate was the spinach. I liked the spinach. But that was about it. But drank a lot of soda. Got really bad though when I got in high school. I wrestled. And my freshman year, I weighed 87 pounds, and 98 pounds was the lowest weight, so that was not a problem. But the next few years, I was having to cut weight. Now, at lunch, we'd go over to a fast food place. I like to go over to one place, Carl's Jr. I'd get a Superstar with double cheeseburger, fries, and a Dr. Pepper or Coke or something like that. My junior year, I was having to cut a couple pounds every week. My senior year, I was about the same size as I am, 5'6", wrestling the 115-pound weight class. And I was losing about 8 pounds a week to make weight. And that was watching what I ate over the weekend. And I would just not eat or drink anything for the next 3 or 4 days. I knew as long as I was within 2 pounds the day before, I'd lose those 2 pounds overnight. My very last match was on a Thursday, and they'd weighed us in on Thursday morning. And as soon as I weighed in, I just drank and drank and drank as much water as I could. I ate and ate till I was stuffed, and then I remember how much, and I wrestled that night. So that was on a Thursday, 115. The following Monday, I weighed 145.
Wow.
Gained 30 pounds. Now, a lot of that was water weight because I was very, very dry.
That's quite a bit still.
Wow.
And then, of course, the league finals were the following Saturday. And I asked my mom, who was a nurse, can you get me some water pills? And she said no. And so I didn't make weight. But what's really funny is I went to the league finals. This is in California. I went to the practice to go to state, and I couldn't beat the guy who's my best friend on my team, one weight above me, but 2, 3, and 4 weights above me. The guys that won the league, I could beat them all. When I was strong, I wasn't weak, and so it was very frustrating. And so I kept, basically that was it. I got into, I went to college, pre-med right after high school. Unfortunately, I got involved in skydiving and flying, and skydiving kind of took over for me, and I'd take classes and cut them, but I mean, nothing but junk food, nothing but restaurant, and nothing green. It was all brown. And then I decided after a few years, if I want to be a doctor, I better, change my lifestyle and at least go back to college. So I did that. I went to respiratory therapy school because I thought if I didn't get into medical school, I'd have a good medical career. And so this is in Southern California, and I went to Loma Linda. They had a 4-year, there was one of the few colleges that had 4-year degrees in respiratory therapy. And one of my friends said, that's an Adventist university. And I have no idea what that means, but I found out that the Adventists don't eat very well. They eat a vegetarian diet, and so I didn't see much of it in the cafeteria to eat, so I wound up going to Del Taco or McDonald's. It was in neighborhood to eat, which is funny because if you're familiar with the blue zones, Loma Linda is one of the 5 blue zones where people live to be 100 and still active. So I met my wife when I was in college, and she was an on and off vegetarian, and so I went to medical school. Of course, what do you do when you're studying? You eat junk food, potato chips and ho-hos and ding-dongs and drink Cokes and things like that. And the weight started slowly coming on because I stayed at that 145 for quite a while, at least through my skydiving career. I did notice that I was getting heavier. but didn't really think much of it. Never exercised. In fact, my wife, one year for my birthday, she bought me a treadmill. Very subtle. I think I got on it once or twice. We ended up selling it a couple of years later. She liked to run. And so after residency, and a good story there. One of the I used to like the old Jack in the Box tacos. They were deep fried with a meat-like substance in the middle, and there was a Jack in the Box right across from Wilford Hall, where I did my ER residency. And on Tuesdays they had 3 tacos for $1. So one of my attendings loved those too. So we bought like 90 tacos. We each threw.
Love it.
And we'd give some of them out, but. So when I came, after I got out of the Air Force, went down to Texas to help these guys start a group down in Amarillo. And I remember at work I had my double cheeseburger and my chili fries there and my big Coke. And one of the nurses comes by and says, that stuff's going to kill you. And I laughed, ha, ha, ha. But I was thinking in my mind, well, if I die a few years early, that's okay because I'm enjoying this now. That's not only selfish, it's stupid. Plus, I was arrogant again, like I said about my health. Nothing's going to happen to me. And I was about 45. I got on the scale, and at work one night at 197, and I said, "Oh, if I hit 200, I'm officially fat." In my mind, I didn't even like looking at myself in the mirror as well. So I told my wife, "Let's join a gym, get in shape, lose some weight." And she rolled her eyes at me because that's what wives do when husbands say stupid things. Because through the years we join a gym but never go. It so happened though they had a program for a couple $100 for 6 weeks. You get with a nutritionist once a week and a trainer once a week. And so she put me on on a calorie restricted diet. And I'd weigh out my little piece of meat, but now I'm eating vegetables. Instead of having 6 or 7 sodas a day, I'm just drinking water. I'm working out 6 days a week. And I was doing so well after 3 weeks. She says, "I want to put you on the shred." I go, "What's this?" Now, this is 1999. Okay, so she goes, "It's where you can eat as much protein as you want, just no carbs." And I thought I died and went to heaven. And I remember meeting my son who's going to college in Arizona. We met in New Mexico to go skiing, and it was in the spring, and they happened to have a barbecue pit out there, and they were flipping burgers, and I said, "Give me 3 burgers, no bun." And I could only eat 1 of them. And actually the 24 hours onto that diet, I had no energy. I'd go to the gym and I was doing weights, but I'd go on the treadmill or stair stepper for about 10 minutes beforehand. I had no energy to do it. Just from 24 hours of really no carbs. And so I wound up, losing. After a week, she said, "How'd it go?" I go, "Terrible." I'd lost my appetite. I was in a ketoacidotic state, and I was poisoning myself, really. So after a week, she said, "How'd it go?" I go, "Put me back on the other diet because I don't like this." And over the next few months, I stayed like that. I lost almost 60 pounds. My cholesterol went from 280 to 170. I even told my wife, I'm glad I changed my lifestyle because I'm in the best shape that I ever was. Something bad was going to happen. And so after a year, I cut out red meat completely. I was just eating salmon because we had this little smoker, and I would smoke, and it was great. Eating vegetables, I was using olive oil fairly liberally, probably too liberally. But over the next 2 years, working out 6 days a week, 10% body fat, doctors forgot how I used to be. And my wife liked to do marathon, or wanted to do a marathon. She liked to run. I started running, doing races with her, and it was fun. And so there was a marathon in January of '03, January of '04 in Phoenix. And so I told my wife, I signed up for the marathon. She goes, "I want to at least do a half marathon first," but we signed up for both of it. But actually before that, I said, the marathon's too much. I kind of have bad knees. Let's do a triathlon, and we can do a short one, runs only 3 miles, and she was a little nervous about the swim because I said, well, we'll join a master swim team. So while I'm training for that, this is in '02. This is like fall of '02. I had enough symptoms. In fact, I got on the treadmill. We went to the spin class, and I had this feeling of impending doom. We hear about that, we talk about that. About 10 minutes into it, I didn't have pain or anything, but everything was going black on me. I had this terror, something bad was about to happen. I panicked. I got off the bike, composed myself, told my wife, came back in and said, I'm going to go over the ER and just do a EKG. And she goes, okay, we'll go. And of course, the EKG is normal because the symptoms have passed. Now let's go back and get on the treadmill. So I get on the treadmill, now I get jaw pain, chest pain, and arm pain. And so I'm thinking, so this is what a heart attack feels like. So I stopped and went away, called a cardiologist friend of mine, and he goes, oh, Larry, you're in great shape, because I'm 10% bad. He goes, what's your risk factor? I go, my cholesterol used to be high. Oh, you're fine. I go, no, you need to do a stress test on me today. And so he does, and I went 17 minutes on it, which is pretty good. And he goes, it looked pretty good. At the end, there was something a little bit funny. I think it was artifact, but watch your exercise and take these pills. Despite being a cardiologist as a friend, and the way I looked, he could not imagine anything could be wrong with me. And so I even said, shouldn't we do a cardiac catheterization? And he says, okay. So we scheduled that for 3 days later. And I was working nights, and we're sitting in his office. We're sitting before the cath in the morning in the waiting room. And I'm telling my wife, at the worst, I'll have to have a bypass. I'm ER. I'm doom and gloom, and my wife's very up. She says, no, at the best, it's going to be great. It's going to be normal. We'll go out and celebrate. And I think at that time we'd been married about 24 years. And in those 24 years, I'd never been right about anything until then. So he does the cath, and he didn't. I don't need sedation. I saw the first picture, and I could see there was a big blockage in the LAD, the left anterior descending artery. And then he goes, oh, there's another one. It was a place where they couldn't do a stent. He said, there's a trifurcation. If I stent it, I'm going to cut off another artery, and you're going to have a heart attack. Bring my wife in, and she even looked him in the eye and said, is there anything he can do diet-wise? And he snaps back at her, no. And so I can calm down, don't, we're okay. We'll have the surgery. And so that was on Thursday. We scheduled the surgery for Saturday morning. Of course, because I'm a doctor, there's a complication. He actually did me a beating heart. He didn't put me on a bypass pump. And so he did two of the vessels with the artery, internal mammary artery, and the vein was the third vessel. Well, I woke up and I kept telling him there's something wrong. They go, Dr. Cohen, it's just a chest tube. I go, no, there's something wrong. It hurts too much. Just push the morphine button, and finally, some blood starts draining, and I hear her say, he said, keep an eye on it. Next thing I know, he's up there squeezing blood in me. I look, my blood pressure's, like 70 over 50, and my heart rate's 160, and so they had to take me back emergently. What happened was one of the little clips on one of the veins came off, and so it was bleeding. Yeah, and I was in a tamponade.
Oh my.
So. Yeah, so the next morning when I woke up, I felt fine. I said, take the morphine pump out. I don't need it. That doesn't hurt that bad. But I did remember work done by Dean Ornish on plaque regression in a plant-based diet. So that's when I started, and that was February of 2003. And so we completely went plant-based, low fat. On his diet, on his regimen, it was less than 10% of calories come from fat. Basically, no added fat, no added oils, no refined foods, things like that. And so it's interesting because my cardiologist wanted to do a nuclear medicine scan a couple of months later, just because of the complication, make sure everything's okay, and it shows there's still blockage there. A year later, I actually went down to the Cooper Clinic in Dallas. I wanted to be someplace where they didn't know me, there's no bias, and they do all kinds of stuff. I mean, you're staying there in the hotel, they come by and offer you enemas for if you're going to get the your
colonoscopy.
Actually they just did sigmoidoscopy, but I said no, I'm not doing that at this time. Anyway, so but I had a nuclear medicine scan, completely normal. And I do fly, and every year I have to have for the FAA, I have to have a stress test, which I always pass with flying colors. So that's how I got involved in lifestyle and researching it from then on and seeing, gosh, I was asked by a pastor at this church if I could teach this program called CHIP. Then it was called the Coronary Health Improvement Project. And it started in the late 80s, I think. It was a canned lecture. It was 4 nights a week for 4 weeks. And every time, people, basically we have them eat, a healthy, low-fat, whole food plant-based diet. We did tell them, just for this month, just no animal products at all. And then if you want to have a little bit of meat, that's fine afterward. And they'd lose. We have an average of about 7-pound weight loss. We'd have some people lose 20 plus pounds. Some people only lose a little bit. Some people didn't follow quite. But the average, we had every program. We did about 12 of them. We did them twice a year. Every program we'd have. Somebody would tell me within the first week that they can't eat like that because they can't. Every time they stand up, they feel like they're going to pass out, and take their blood pressure and be 110/50, and they're on like 2 or 3 blood pressure medicine. They say you need to talk to your doctor about getting that. One guy, because we do blood work before and after, I get called. I told him about some critical labs. The lab called me about his triglycerides were over 3,000. Now we want them under 150. Over 500 is considered critical. And his cholesterol was 440, and he was on 2 oral diabetic medicines, and his blood sugar was 290. And I said, listen, you need to see your doctor. I was really concerned about his lab, especially those triglycerides. And he's kind of plethoric, and he thought, well, I'd like to at least try this, About 2-3 nights into it, he goes, I'm starting to think more clearly. We do show a video of a hamster pouch under a microscope live with the blood flow through the capillaries and give it a fatty meal, and how the blood just sludges through and doesn't move. And so at the end of 4 weeks, his triglycerides went from over 3,000 to 125. His cholesterol dropped 300 points from 440 to 140, and he stopped his 2 diabetic medicines. I think his fasting blood sugar was like 115 or something like that, and that was in 4 weeks. And the man, and he lost 20 pounds. So I would start telling, but people would tell me that their arthritis got better, their reflux seemed to get better. I had one lady; she was diagnosed with MS. And her doctor wanted her on medicine based on her scan. She's a very smart lady, so she did some research. There was been research on plant-based diets and MS. And actually, the University of Oregon is doing some research on that right now, and they're very impressed with what's going on. But this was like almost 15 years ago. She went through that. She never went on the medicine. Her neurologist says, I still need to ask if you want, although I know you don't need it, and I don't know you don't want it. So a lot of autoimmune diseases can be helped. I mean, not everything can be helped with it, but we do know about 80% of our chronic diseases and up to 40% of our cancers are lifestyle related. It's amazing. So I kept saying, this shouldn't be called the Coronary Health Improvement Project, because it's not just, it could be the blood pressure, it could be the obesity, it could be the autoimmune, whatever. And they have changed the name now, not because of me, to the Complete Health Improvement Program. So. It's a good program. They're all over the country, but I haven't taught one for a few years.
So when you were in that coronary unit and recovering from your heart surgery, could you tell us what it was like, and did you make the decision then and there, and what was your motivation? Was it your family, your wife, your just desire to live longer? You thought this might be it. I'm not gonna survive, let alone a few days, maybe not even a year from now.
Right. Yeah. It is a life-changing episode. I love my family, and I love living, and I was enjoying my life so much. I got to do whatever I would do, anything. Have to go through that again. And it's interesting because I'll see people in the emergency department that will have these terrible diseases, and they won't change their lifestyle. They think we as physicians can cure things, and so they'll keep adding more and more pills, more and more medicines. And for me, I didn't want that, and and I can see, how some people here's a good example. In the emergency room, we don't have much time to talk to people. This guy, 28 years old, comes in. I diagnosed him with new onset diabetes. And I started him on some medicine, and I told him about some lifestyle changes he could do. And he looked at me and said, I'd rather take the pill. Okay. Well, about a year later, I had a guy come in. He weighed about 340 pounds. His wife was in the upper 200s. Early 30s. They had a couple of kids, like a 7 and 9-year-old. Beautiful family. And he comes in, basically he had an abscess, he had a perirectal abscess. He had, you're going to have surgery. But I get his labs, his blood sugar's over 500. I told him, you have diabetes. And he said, well, I was concerned about that. My mother had it, and she had all kinds of problems with it, heart attack, she lost a leg. And so we were the busiest emergency department in the state of Colorado. And I sat down there on a busy night for 30 minutes talking to these people. Because I remember what happened last time. And they seemed to be getting excited. I could tell, look in both their eyes, that they're getting excited. I think, I'm getting through to them. And finally he says, but I love my meat. And he said that. I looked at his wife, and it's like he took a knife and stabbed her in the chest. You love your meat more than us, And that's it. I mean, that's how I was. If I die a few years early, I'm enjoying this now. The thing is, I enjoy eating as much now, if not more, than before. And so it was eye-opening, and I would do anything to have to go through that again. That's when I remembered the Ornish research, and then did more research on that, and just even today, it's amazing. There was an article probably about 15 years ago. It said a high-fiber diet cut down all-cause mortality, and it's not cardiac. We don't know why, but it has to come from whole food. It has to have whole grains and legumes. And at that time, I don't think they really knew much about the biome, the bacteria in the gut. And now we see more and more, we're seeing why that is at the high-fiber foods. And people say, well, where do you get your protein? And I mean, I'm fairly muscular looking, And I said, I'm not kidding. So where do you get your fiber, So.
How do you feel overall compared with, say, the sort of when they were worse out of shape, and then after you went like a year or 2 years of a good diet, not just physical, overall thinking wise, or just feeling good about yourself? How do you feel? Sort of two different contrast times.
Well, what I was eating, I was eating what we consider probably,
typical American diet.
Yeah, Mediterranean diet. And had I not done that, I would have dropped over dead. The thing is, it did not arrest the slow plaque growth that I had, but it probably stabilized it. And I mean, I would have been up there skiing one day, and on my old day, and I would have been 45 years old and a big old heart attack on the mountain. The exercise definitely played a good part of that as well. And I've seen people. I remember one night. These two guys come in, exact same EKGs, having a heart attack. Okay, I mean, you could have switched them, and the inferior part of the heart was EKGs were identical. One guy worked out, exercised every day. The other guy, no exercise. The one that exercised, you wouldn't even know he's having a heart attack talking to him. The other guy looked like he was on death's door. For me, they both are very important, and so I needed to, and that's why the American College of Lifestyle Medicine and what they find, it's not alternative medicine. It is straight. It is general medicine. It is. There's nothing, it's not based on rat studies or what we think this might be. It's based on good science, both, typical experimental science as well as population observations and things like that. If you look at the American College of Cardiology, American Heart Association, in their guidelines for cholesterol, right? Number 2, lifestyle. Yet most physicians don't know how to do it, and most physicians don't have the time to even talk about it. There's the University of South Carolina, I think it's University of South Carolina, that has all 4 years of their medical school now. They have a lifestyle medicine track that everybody has to take. And so it's starting to get out there. People are starting to learn. Even some of the new cardiologists that have come to our hospital here at UC Health are very aware of lifestyle and how important it is, and how important eating a healthy diet is. Some of the older cardiologists says, it's all genetics. It doesn't matter what you eat.
Yeah, traveling around the world, when you come here, it's really shocking. One, even going to medical school and see, unfortunately, even today's, we agreed in the last year to go to doctor's lounge, how poorly the nutrition in the hospital as well as the physician. And I think if you do not know that, how could you teach it? And you have to be patient believe it. And then I see a lot of patients that, we start with reflux and obesity, elevated liver enzymes, and they end up with cancer and heart attack. So I think it's the food industry and the culture and fast paced has created this, and I'm so glad that people like you, and it takes a turning point for people to change this culture, change the thing that you cannot just eat that diet and just live happily ever after and then taking maybe 4 or 5 pills, but at some point you need to do something for yourself, and so here that how beautifully you have done so many years, and it's doable. A lot of people says, I cannot do it. There's a point of no return. If you gain weight too much, you cannot join. But I think it's so wonderful. And has your experience now been with this lifestyle medicine you've been doing since 2006? You said, or no, 6 years?
I started teaching that class back then, but the only income I receive is from my emergency medicine work, which I actually retired from the ER a year ago. But I started doing this, the Walk with a Doc in 2017.
I see.
Almost 6 years ago, well, 5.5 years ago. Walk with a Doc is a great program because it gets people out there to walk. Dr. David Sabger in Columbus, Ohio, he's a cardiologist and trying to get his patients to walk, because we know, the mantra now is, exercise is medicine. And so he said, okay, if you meet me in the park, I'll walk with you. And he had 100 patients show up. And since then, when we started, there were about 270 chapters. Now there's over 500, and they're worldwide. And, everybody can you give a few minute, a 5-10 minute talk beforehand on whatever, health subject. I tend to try to keep lifestyle medicine related, even for instance with COVID. It's been shown that people that eat essentially a plant-based diet or a pescatarian diet, they have a 70% less chance of being hospitalized or dying from COVID. It's not going to protect you, but you've just built up your immune system so well. I guess I'm a perfect example. I got COVID when I was, 67, early on, and I was fatigued for a few weeks, but I never got a cough. I never had a fever. I never had, but I got over it pretty good. That was before there was a vaccine. So,
do you ever feel? I'm not sure what the right word is. Do you feel like, is it bitter, or just feel like a lot of doctors kind of miss the boat with lifestyle medicine, or how we treat patients in the ER? You see folks come in all the time with heart attacks or symptomatic, diabetes, infections, all the gamut of things.
I don't get bitter. I'm not upset with physicians in general, because most of them, we've never been trained. Our medical school is
QT.
Yeah, it's not. We're not trained to treat, to prevent. We're trained to treat. 100 years ago, medicine basically took care of trauma. So you hear somebody got hurt, you bandage them up. Until we got, until we developed good sanitation and antibiotics, people, it's interesting. I read a study. People that were born in 1900 had a lifespan of about 40, 45 years, something like that. If the people that were born in 1900, the ones that made it to 20, that didn't die as children from infectious diseases, we've maybe added 7 years of life to, and that's basically, and the thing is, we've got great medicines, we've got great procedures, but sometimes, you go in, I've got high blood pressure, doctor doesn't have much time, and the way the insurance pays and things, you don't have much time to do anything except for, write a prescription. Most physicians will tell you, try to eat better and go out and exercise. There has to be more motivation, I like the idea of writing a prescription. Say, okay, eat 3 pieces of fruit a day. Go walk 30 minutes a day, and do that. And there's just, unfortunately, there's no money, and people, especially today, these guys come out of medical school $500,000 in debt, and payment isn't always maybe not be
disease management. When I am very historian, I like to read history of medicine, and some of people like Avicenna and all things when I read their books. And it essentially that when, of course, at that time they did a lot of house visits. One of the things was, it says, they ask him, so how wonderfully the patient. He says, when I go around there, I look around to see what he's been eating, how his lifestyle is. That's easy. I can tell him what's wrong with him. And the older physician went back home. When you went there, before they ask you things, that they ask you what you eat for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then they give you a menu to what you eat. Then was the medicine, but unfortunately, I think post-World War II, stuff which we have more abundant food, more abundant, the lifestyle has, got sort of, everybody expect to have the dessert after every dinner and all of that, and they think that people, they want to just continue with that, and they do not pay attention to that, and of course, we involve a lot of good medicine, whether it's reducing the acid, or bring the blood pressure down. I think people, they want to take, right, as you said, take the pills, and not to do that, but I think it's time for us to reverse the whole things. And I think as a lifestyle medicine, as all physicians and medical school, I think start from the training to do those things. So the medicine or procedure be the last thing we do, but it is I think it is something as a whole country. I think everybody should be taught to do as a patient as well as the doctors, and then continue with that.
Yeah, the obesity epidemic is pretty. It's pretty fascinating when you look at from 1980s, 1990s to today, and you have one of those moving maps that you can see it on Twitter or different internet sites. We'll post one in the show notes, and it's dramatic to see just how from the 80s and 90s to today where we're at, and vast majority of the states have that rapidly increasing obesity rates, much more so than the prior 30 years. So what's going on there?
Yeah, I think the CDC has a good, you go from year to year to year, and it just, it's a good download. So, and
also other countries like Mexico, even in Middle East countries, that this has become like an export of American diet, and you see the pictures before or after, or even Taiwan or other places, you see that this is, unfortunately, it becomes like contagious things to go all around, and living with burgers and hot dogs and sodas particularly, and it's and it's going to cost not this country, many other countries, lots of financial burden.
And it's very confusing for everybody, even for physicians. For example, JAMA had an article about 5 or 6 years ago about fat and cholesterol. Maybe it's not that big a deal, and they did, it was a review of the literature, and I started looking at some of the literature they were looking at. Some of them had nothing to do with low fat and things like that. One was a really good article. It was part of the nurses' health study, and it said, does a low-fat diet prevent heart disease or recurrence of breast cancer in women? And the answer was no. But then if you read through it, and it said, well, the author said, well, we wanted to get our low fat under 20%. They had 29%. The high fat was 36%. So they didn't really have a low fat diet. Where that 30% comes from, people will say 30% is considered low fat, 20 to 35%. That's a big range. But the American Academy of Sciences and I think NIH or a couple other groups got together in the early 80s to try to stem this obesity epidemic. And they said, well, what do we need to do? Well, we need to lower the fat intake in people. Okay, well, the average American gets 43% of the calories from fat. And they looked, well, the Japanese in the 70s had no heart disease, diabetes, or obesity, and they got 13% of the calories come from fat. They go, well, we can't ask Americans to do that. So they dropped it down. They split the difference to 30%. And at the time, they said, we don't know if this is it. But that's what people use as low-fat diets in their studies. So you're not going to see really good results, lifestyle-wise. I like to look at it this, if you drive a car into a brick wall at 100 miles an hour, you're dead. You drive you drive into a brick wall at 50 miles an hour, you're dead. You drive your car into a brick wall at 10 miles an hour, you're going to walk away. Mm-hmm. So we don't know where that is, but the 30% is not. You can eat 30% of calories come from fat, but if you're eating healthy foods. Mm-hmm. When you start eating all these refined, like carbohydrates, we'd get our diabetics off their diabetes medicine at 70%. They're eating 70% of the calories come from carbs, but from whole foods, nothing processed. That's the big difference. So even the Journal of American College of Cardiology a few years ago had a great study. They showed a healthy plant food diet versus an unhealthy plant food diet with a standard diet. And the unhealthy plant food diet didn't do much better than the standard diet for heart disease, where the healthy plant food diet, did great. So when I see 300-pound vegans in the emergency department, I know they're not eating healthy. And because the majority of vegans do it for ethical reasons, and that's fine, but they're not helping themselves.
They eat a lot of carbohydrates and processed food. And,
right.
I think that one of the things when I look at American literature, it's all done for a short period of time.
Right.
But when you look at, if you want to look at as they done with Blue Zone, just observation, go through the cultures, how they live, the longevity, and it's just a whole lifestyle. I was talking to one of our cardiologists. He says, I see, physician with a lot of some good health diet, but they have a lot of plaques. He says, like the stress of being on call, the stress of, and says when people are on stressful jobs, that's by itself is a huge risk of today's lifestyle. Yeah. So I think you just need to take the whole life as, preventive medicine, and just everything you do every day works, and look at some of the older cultures, some of the Blue Zone life or things like that, and incorporate in our reasonable diet and go forward. Exercise, as we mentioned before, stress, sleep, hydration, and avoiding from this processed food. I think this processed food and stress today is horrible in the whole culture in the United States.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say the whole low-fat diet fad of the 80s and 90s was just a dismal failure.
Yeah.
I mean, not even help. I think it was actually more harmful than helpful.
Well, here's a perfect example. There was this company, they made a cracker, and they said, what can we do to get this low fat? So they tried all these different permutations and recipes. Nothing tasted good. And then one brilliant guy in the company said, why don't we just add 100 calories of honey to it? That's how honey grams came. It said 50% less fat. Well, it's the same amount of fat, but by calorie count, it's 50% less. So, it's all, and then here, honey, try this new graham cracker. It's low fat. He goes, no, I don't want to do it. And then he eat this honey graham cracker. That's good. And he eat the whole box,
Yeah. So, and sometimes I see this actually with my celiac patient. I'm not thinking for just to oral, what is good, what's not. Sometimes this patient, they say, well, I have celiac. Then, perfect example, one of our nurses at the hospital, she had all kinds of, they thought she has IBS, feeling fatigued, tired, not gaining weight. And anyway, for one reason, came to me and we discovered, and in biopsy proven celiac. I saw her in 6 months. She was overweight. Humongous. I says, what you have done? He says, you told me I have celiac, and now on celiac-free diet. But she got cookies, bread, anything was celiac. She thought it's healthy.
Yeah.
And she was just eating this consuming of this global amount of, there was that, gluten-free diet. That's just, the calorie is still the calorie. The food is still, you got to have, because it was, and of course some of them, there were a lot of process into it. It's just, she consumed, she knew every single candy that was gluten-free. She knew about everything. She made them, says, I says, but overall, it still is calories, still is process you need. And something you see with people with vegan or vegetarian, they do the same thing. They think because it's, it's Impossible Burger is tasty and has no meat in it. It's good, but you have to be in everything you do be, reasonable and still.
Those things are 60% fat.
So last question: Did you do the triathlon or perhaps other? Now I want to listeners. Larry has an Ironman shirt on, so it sounds like there was some pretty 2007.
So I think it was 4 months after the surgery. My wife and I did our first triathlon. She actually got second in her age group, and
nice.
I finished. Our second triathlon was out in California. She got first in her age group, and I finished.
Wow.
And then the following January, which is just 11 months after surgery, we did our first marathon down in Phoenix. And we've done a lot. And then, yes, I did a lot of triathlons. I done 2 Ironman, a lot of shorter races and mid races. Personally, right now, I don't like doing those long races. For me, a half marathon is about the longest I want to do. I don't know how healthy it is to go farther, especially some of the. And I know a lot of guys that did a lot of marathons when they were younger, and then they have no knees. Now, I had knee surgery when I was 18 on both knees, 18 and 19, and so they were always sore a little bit. But never. Before I started running, I got X-rays to make sure I didn't have bone on bone, and I noticed that after I changed my diet, it could have been part of the weight loss, but it's also a very anti-inflammatory diet. I could run, and my knees really didn't bother me. They used to swell up after running. Of course, that was or skiing, and that was. But yeah, so we've done a lot of races. The nice thing about signing up for a race, even if like coming up is Thanksgiving turkey trots, just train for it. If you sign up for the race, you're going to train for it, even if you don't train that great. But the biggest thing is to get out and try to do at least 30 minutes a day. When we say 30 minutes a day, 150 minutes a week of moderate exercise, or 15 or 75 minutes of vigorous exercise. For me, I like to tell people, well, what's the difference? I go, moderate, you can talk but not sing. So it's a brisk walk. Vigorous, you can't talk or sing while you're doing it. But walking is just such a great exercise. Most people can do it. If you can't do it because for whatever reason, knees, if you could ride a bike, that's fine. Bicycle riding could be a little bit more dangerous these days with people texting while they're driving. But yeah, anytime, things around the house, the other thing I tell people when if they're home and watching TV, stand up, walk around, at least at the commercials, sitting itself has been shown to be a problem in itself. So
it's amazing what you have come through and such a great example, and what you can be, you really can change your lifestyle and really live a long time. Yeah, for us, we put the station back to front of the TV. If my wife have to watch the news, so at least we can exercise, make you feel guilty. You got to do it, and just simple, diet, activity, and then you sleep better, then you feel better. So tremendously.
And talk about stress. If you're really stressed out about what's going on in the world, don't watch the news. Because there's not a whole lot you're going to be able to do to change it. And stress, so in lifestyle medicine we talk about eating a predominantly whole food plant-based eating pattern, not necessarily diet. Physical activity, sleep. Your body does recover. Need to sleep. Good 7 hours is probably the best. I used to, as a night working at night, a good day's sleep for me was 6 hours. Now that's a bad night's sleep for me since I've gone to nights, since I went to days. But stress reduction, avoidance of toxic substances like tobacco, alcohol, things like that, drugs, as well as a good community relationship. And that, I think, goes along with the stress reduction. That's probably why my mother is still 98. There's never been any stress in her life. She's a very most stress-free person, and she always had friends. She'd go out and she'd play. She liked to play cards, and she had a group of friends that she'd go play cards, a couple times a week. So she had this, So I think that in itself, she quit smoking when she was 40, 44, and fortunately, she didn't have cancer from it, but.
Healthy relationships.
Yeah.
Very important.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. Your story is amazing, and I'm sure our listeners will love to hear it. And we'd love to talk more at a future date. And Abbas and I did the Walk with the Doc walk, and that was so great. And thank you for doing that.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it very much.
Yeah, and I want you guys to both come back. Next time you'll be the keynote speaker, Abbas,
Awesome.
And then
Be honored.
yeah, and so I'll get some dates for you.
Yeah. That'd be great.
Awesome. Thanks again.
All right, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
If you have any questions for us or our guests, please reach out to us at our website, doc2doc.health. That's DOC, number 2, DOC.health. And there you can leave us messages and feedback. If you have any suggestions for future episodes, please let us know. Thanks again for listening, and we will see you at the next episode.